Hello and welcome back to Stripe Developer Office Hours. I'm CJ and I'm joined again today by Charles Watkins. We are on the developer advocacy team here at Stripe, and we've got a really action-packed episode for you this time around. We're going to be talking about the brand new payment element, which we can we'll share the landing page here. It's just such a beautiful, beautiful way to integrate with Stripe. But first, before we get into the payment element, we wanted to share some developer updates with you. So we're going to go over just a quick round of dev updates for the month of October. So in the month of October, we released an episode of the Search API beta, where we're talking about all the different ways that you can integrate with the Search API. You can head over to the YouTube channel and check that out. We are still accepting beta users for the Search API and would love your feedback for that. We also launched a brand new integration builder for working with Stripe billing. So that is now available. You can go head over and check that out in the Stripe documentation. For Stripe payment links that allow you to create payment links with no code directly through the dashboard, we launched the ability to collect tax automatically. So you can just come in here, toggle a switch, and then start collecting tax, which is pretty exciting. And that goes along with the Stripe tax product. We released the ability to collect phone numbers with checkout. There's actually a ton of new features with checkout. You can also do subscription upsells with checkout. We're handling decimal amounts for pricing. There's also some new changes coming for platform controls for standard accounts for Connect. So if you're working with the Connect platform, you'll want to head over and read up on some of the details for what's changing with Connect. We also launched a brand new terminal reader for users in US and Canada. It looks like there might be even wider availability here for the WisePause E countertop reader for Stripe Terminal. Really exciting stuff. Link with Stripe is also out and available for, I believe this is for beta testing. Is that right, Charles?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think we've got an email address. If you're interested in playing with Link with Stripe, you can reach out to this email address and we'll share it in the dev chat here. And this is sort of like the old Remember Me feature that we had with the previous version of like the modal checkout. This is going to be the brand new version, Link with Stripe. So if you're interested in beta testing that, let us know. We'll let you know the email address to send that to. We also launched some videos showing how to integrate Stripe tax with checkout. The on.net show we did a collaboration with where you can learn how to process payments using C# and Stripe. There's also a big conference coming up called The Big Transaction. This is November 4th and 5th, all about payments. So if you're interested in payments, I know that they are currently releasing a couple more tickets, so you can head over and check out The Big Transaction. So that wraps up our updates for today. Charles has a really exciting demo for us. Charles, you want to share your screen and then we'll get into it here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Let's go ahead. Let's do it. So if you have been integrating Stripe for a while, you know that in addition to just like integrating cards, you also want to integrate other payment methods. This is especially true if you are serving any types of customers outside of the United States, right? And so yesterday we launched the payment element, which is like one element to rule them all. It's the one element that you can use to integrate 18 plus payment methods. Now, what I have here is a really simple glitch, which just shows how the payment element, what it looks like, how it works. So you'll see here that we have this payment element. It's enabled for cards, Google Pay, because I'm on Chrome and I actually have Google Pay on this browser, SEPA debit, as well as EPS. Now, what makes the payment element super cool is that it allows you to integrate all these payment methods without a lot of code. Now, if you were going to integrate 18 payment methods, that could have been hundreds and hundreds of lines of code. But with the payment element, adding additional payment methods is super simple. As a matter of fact, let me show you very quickly like what it looks like. So this is what we have. This is what we're going to build. Let me just show you quickly, like if we wanted to add, say, GiroPay to this payment element, what it would look like. So I'm on Glitch. I'm going to hop into my code here. I have a server.js file here. It's running Fastify. It's very similar to Express Express server. So right now I got cards. I have SEPA debit. Can add in, say, GiroPay, EPS, and you'll see here that it's restart my server here. If I go back, do a quick refresh. Actually, let me refresh from the bottom of the site. You'll see I got card, Google Pay, SEPA debit, GiroPay, and as well as EPS. So you can see it's like super simple to add payment methods, modify your code with really, really small changes, and open up entire new audiences in terms of like people being able to pay with the payment method that they actually want to pay with, right? So
amazing. It's so wild that you could just make that one change and add a single word, and then immediately you're unlocking an entire audience where you can, now you can sell to anyone who wants to pay with EPS, and all you had to write was EPS as like a string value in that array. That's pretty incredible.
It's pretty sweet. Actually, let's give it a whirl. Let's see how it works. So I'm just going to type in the 4242 token here.
So that is a test card.
Yes, if you type in 4242, it's going to succeed. So I'll go ahead and click pay here. And it will redirect me upon completion. And you'll see here, like when it actually succeeds, we have a nice little message here. We're actually pulling in some of the information from the payment that we just made from the redirect. So we can see that the payment's status is succeeded. And this payment was for 20 euro. So we see 2,000 here because, of course, amounts are in cents, the smallest unit available. So now that we see what we had, let's like rebuild the sucker.
Let's do it. Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay.
Should we share the glitch if folks want to follow along?
Oh yeah,
I can drop that. Yeah, I can drop that in the comments if.
100%. It's
Okay.
payment-office-hours.glitch.me.
Awesome.
And CJ is going to drop it in the chat.
There we go.
All right, cool. So let's get rid of some of this code here. So the majority of the code we saw was just in here in terms of what's on the front end. So we'll just delete that.
Okay. We've also got a question here from Hemanth. Also, thanks, Hemanth, for all your engagement. We appreciate all the comments on all the YouTube channels. You've got some really excellent questions. So thanks for reaching out. This is the first one that comes in where he asked, does the payment element support ACH if my account origin is in the UK or and is accepting the currency GBP? And that, I think, as of right now, it is something that we're absolutely keen to add, but ACH is not one of the payment methods that we're releasing with. Is that right, Charles?
That's right. We don't have ACH today, but it's definitely something we hope to add in the future.
So yeah, stay tuned. On Twitter @StripeDev, we'll absolutely be ready and excited to announce when ACH is available. There are 18 payment methods out of the gate, but there are several that we are really excited to fast follow with. So ACH is absolutely one of those.
100%. So I have just erased the majority of my code here, but I'm going to show you what I'm starting with. So I have a really, really basic setup here on Glitch. It's a Fastify server. We do have Stripe as a dependency. We're pulling in our secret key. If you are following along, you'll want to add in your secret key and your publishable key in the .env file, right? So if you go down here, you'll want to add in these your secret key and your public key. The project domain isn't as important, but you'll definitely want to add those in. So, take a moment, go to your dashboard, grab your keys. If you're following along, drop them in your .env file.
Yeah, and I think you can remix this glitch so you can play around with it on your own if you'd like.
Yeah.
And then when you remix, you'll have to add those keys.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. And how do you remix? I forget. I think it's right here. So if you click right there, you'll be able to just click remix and you can it'll start you off with all the same code, but the .env file will, be empty. So you can remix and follow along that way. Good call out, CJ. Appreciate it, man. All right. So what do we have so far? Really basic server, really basic setup. We're just rendering a page with some really basic information here, some parameters to control how what shows up in the page. Let's see what else. We have this endpoint so that we can get our publishable key. You're going to see this in pretty much every Stripe integration that uses elements. So that's fairly straightforward. And then we have our basic page here. So let's take a look at what it looks like right now. So I'm going to go ahead, I'll refresh. Let's just make sure that we actually did get rid of everything. Okay, so let's go ahead and fill this in. We have the test tokens that we want. We have our button. We have our console where we'll log some messages just to see errors and states of objects as we create them, like the payment intent. So what do you think, CJ? Are we ready? I think we're ready.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. So to start, let's do the one thing that we're going to need to do in our server.js file, which is we're going to need to create a payment intent. So let's just go ahead and make an endpoint here. It's going to be post, and let's call it create payment intent. This will be async. We'll get a request. We'll get a reply. All right. So we will want to in order to render the payment element, you'll need a client secret from a payment intent. So let's go ahead and we'll start by creating this payment intent. So we'll say the payment intent.
And this is a little bit different than the way that it worked before with just Stripe elements. So the big change as we move from the old card element or the old individual Stripe elements to this new payment element is that we need the payment intent up front. We need the payment intent to be created before we ever create the payment element. So what Charles is doing now is using the Stripe API to create a brand new payment intent. And that payment intent, the way that it's configured, will inform how the payment element is ultimately rendered.
Right. That's totally correct. Because the payment, yeah, you're absolutely right. Because the payment element is essentially going to take that client secret and it's going to be like, oh, what are the payment method types that I am supposed to be configured to like render? And then it'll render accordingly, right? So right. Client secret. I believe that's what it looks like. I might actually have to check the box on this one.
That looks good.
Send, and we're just going to send the client secret. Ready here. All right. So that should be our that should be all we need.
Do we need to pass any payment method types, or is that going to work by default?
So if you don't pass in any payment method types, it will just assume that the only payment method type you're passing is card. But we should pass it in. Let's pass it in.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So in general, you're always going to see in examples that you pass it in, you pass in something, but you can technically pass in nothing and it should work.
Great.
Okay. So we have our we have our payment intent here. So
fantastic.
For next step, let's get started with the real work here. Okay. So to start, we want to obviously use Stripe.js, and we actually have the tag here. So let's see. So we have the tag, so we're good there. So what we'll want to do once we have this DOM content loaded event, the first thing we're going to want to do is to get our publishable key to start. So let's do that. Publishable key. And it's going to be, we're just going to fetch it from our back end. And I believe that was called config. And once we have our response, let's see here. We want to turn it into JSON because it's going to return some JSON with us with this publishable key. We can just do that, pull it out, restructure it. I always feel like I'm saying that wrong. I don't know why.
No, that's good. That's good. Yeah.
Okay. And then the next thing we want to do is we just want to initialize Stripe. So we can do that by just calling Stripe and then passing in the publishable key. Okay. So, and I'll just add in some comments here. All right. So that's a good place to start.
Great.
So as a next step, we will want to, I guess, get our client secret. Now, my reflex is to like start trying to create, trying to create the element. But like you said earlier, you definitely need to have the client secret to even be able to create the element in the first place. So let's do that.
Yeah. So in the past, you might have thought like, okay, the next step is let's create the Stripe elements and then mount those to the page, because previously you didn't actually need the payment intent up front. But now, because you need that client secret from the payment intent, the next step here is going to be that we actually want to like create the payment intent on the server and then use its client secret as part of this new elements initialization.
That's right. That's absolutely right. In this case, it's going to be a post.
Cool.
Let's see. We need some, I think it's headers, right? It's not header. Content type here is going to be application. If I can find my key here, JSON.
That's the one.
And the body, we're not going to pass in anything. You might pass in something like a currency. You wouldn't pass in the amount, but you could potentially pass something in here. So we'll have a body, but we're not going to pass anything in. Now, once we get our response, we're going to do the same thing we did above, which is we're going to take the response, begin in JSON. We're going to grab the client secret. Right. So now we can create the payment element and mount it, right?
That's right.
Right. So the first thing you want to do is instantiate elements, and we can do that by calling Stripe elements. And here is where we would want to pass in the client secret. Like we pass in the client secret as well as some other options, like if we wanted to customize what the payment element looks like, because in addition to being able to like add in all these different payment methods, you can also change its appearance so that it matches the look and feel of your website. And we'll do that a little bit later. Now let's just pass in the client secret. And once we have elements, we can instantiate a payment element. So let's say the payment element is equal to elements dot create payment. I think that's right. Let's see.
Yeah, that looks good to me.
Okay, we're going to see really, really soon. And then finally, we want to mount it. And I believe it's called payment element. That's the empty div we have there.
Okay. So that's like the CSS selector for the div in your HTML that you're going to mount it into.
Yeah.
Cool.
So let me just go ahead and find that one. Let's make sure.
Okay. Yeah, this is also the same or like a similar pattern to what we had before with the old elements, right? Where you can just say mount and you give it a CSS selector and it mounts it into that div.
Yep. And this is the div we want to mount it to. You're right. Like a large amount of it is very, very similar. Like if you had a setup already, you'd really only be changing around kind of the order of some things, right? So if you've used, say, the card element before, instead of, say, passing in the client secret when you're trying to confirm the card payment, in this case, you just pass in the client secret when you're trying to create the element. So it's very similar. The patterns are strikingly similar. So let's see if this is working. Okay. I'm just going to go here. I'm going to, oh goodness. Am I getting a live stream hug of death?
Oh, too many requests. Try again later. We're getting, yeah, DDoS, huh? For the practice.
Oh man, I did not anticipate this. I got to
Yeah,
be
I don't
honest.
think I've ever seen that.
Yeah,
Should we fork it and then like create a separate glitch or something? I don't know.
I
Like,
think we might have to.
okay.
Yeah. Um,
While you're working on that, Mario had a question here that we can jump in and answer. So Mario asked, does it integrate with Stripe Tax? And so Stripe Tax out of the box integrates right now with Stripe Checkout, integrates with Stripe Billing. Um, if you want to use it directly with a payment intent, that is not necessarily supported today, but is definitely something that we would love to add. I'm not actually sure, Charles. Do you have a sense of whether that's going to be supported as part of the payment element itself?
I don't know. I'd have to. I'm not sure. We'll have to um, follow up on that one in a future stream, but don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, it seems like we might need to actually boost that glitch. So
Yeah.
as you're working on it, yeah, why don't we can break that out.
Yeah.
Um, very cool. Awesome. The I guess like another thing that we can do here is pull up the docs. We have these brand new, really beautiful integration builder docs that you can follow along for building the building with the payment element. So right here, we're working with Node.js. You can pick different front ends, different platforms. So if you're working with iOS or Android, there's a new payment sheet that is also available that is very similar to the payment element. So you might want to go check those out. But as part of this integration builder here, this is a really neat way to experience some documentation. So you can sort of scroll through and see the code that you need on the right, while also seeing the pros that are the related documentation on the left here. And so out of the box, you can already see that there's tons of different payment method types. As just sort of a sneak preview, we recognize that it's challenging to know which payment method types you should actually add here. So there's going to be an easier way to do this very soon. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, obviously we would love to automatically sort of populate this for you. So as we're going through this, as we're going through the integration builder, these are the steps that Charles has already completed. So he's already added the script tag here at the top. We've already got a payment element on our form. We've initialized Stripe.js with our publishable key that we fetched from the server. And at this point, what we're doing now is so we've already created the payment intent on the server, and we got back the client secret, and we've initialized Stripe elements. We'll come back and talk about this appearance thing in just a bit, but at this point, we don't actually have appearance. We're just passing in the client secret, and we're mounting the payment element on the page. And yeah, so why don't I pause there, because I think that's where you're at, Charles. And then are you at a spot where you could reshare?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay,
Okay.
so let me
All
go
right,
ahead and
let's jump back
reshare.
into it.
Next time, we're definitely going to have to boost up.
Yeah.
Not a bad problem, though. I'll take it.
No, yeah. Okay.
I'll take it. Okay,
Great.
cool. So made some small changes here. Go ahead here. Okay, so we have our payment intent on server.js. We got our publishable key. We initialize Stripe. We're getting our payment intent, client secret. We're initializing. We're setting up elements. We're creating a payment element, and then we are mounting it to this payment element div. That's where we were. And right before we got the hug of death, we wanted to see what it looked like. And here is where we are. So in this case, I passed in cards. Cards is both cards as well as any digital wallets that may be on the browser. So now we have the card and we have Google Pay, right?
Awesome.
Sweet.
It's so cool that comes just right out of the box.
It
I know a lot
does.
of people are excited to add Google Pay, Apple Pay support. So that's amazing.
It is super cool. So here we are. We have our element. We're in a good spot, but we haven't added any event listeners to this button or this form. So if you click on pay, it doesn't really do anything. Okay. As a matter of fact, it's currently disabled. So let's fix that. Okay, so the next thing that we are going to want to do is, let's see. Well, the first thing we'll probably want to do is initialize, get the button to actually work. So like, let's see. all of the elements have like these events that you can listen to. So I think what we could do is when there's a change, let's see here. I actually probably need to see. When there's a change, you get an event, and let's see here. What you could do is if the event is complete, you could, let's see, I think we have a helper function in here to just like activate the button. So let's see. Yeah, it's called enable button. So we'll enable the button. And that'll just allow us to actually use the button. The next thing we're going to want to do is to just get the button. So in order to do that, we can get the button. I believe we could do document.query selector button. Should do the trick. And then add event listener. We'll be listening for a click on the button. And let's see here. First, we'll want to prevent the default behavior. And let's see what else. We probably want to stop people from clicking the button again. So let's see here. We can set the button state to button state processing. And this is just like a little helper library that we have there. So we'll set it to button state processing. That will disable the button. And let's see. We already have our client secret. So the only thing we need to do is to actually attempt to complete the transaction. Now, in order to do that, it's really similar to any of the other elements that you've used. Essentially, what you're going to do is you are going to call, let's see, stripe.confirm payment, not confirm card payment or anything like that, just confirm payment. And let's see here, you'll pass in elements as well as some confirm params. Now, within confirm params, there's this return URL. The return URL is important because the element has a redirect-based flow. There are a lot of payment methods that have a redirect-based flow. And so to consolidate all of the possible paths, the payment element automatically redirects. Now, in our case, we don't have like a thank you page or anything. So we'll just redirect back to this page. And when the redirect happens, it's not just going to redirect us back to this page. It's going to redirect us back to this page with some parameters on our URL. And it'll include like the payment intent ID, as well as the payment intent client secret. And that is useful because if you have the client secret, you can grab the payment intents, some information about the payment intent from the client side, like whether or not it was completed. And we'll get into that a little bit more later, but it's important to know that you do need this return URL. So let's see here. We're going to try to confirm the payment, and ideally we'll get payment intent in our response. Otherwise, we'll get an error. So let's just grab those two things. Let's see. I think if we have an error, we can add a message, the error's message. Otherwise, we can add a message to like our page there to show the payment intent dot status. Even maybe say something cool like intent status. All right. Okay. So let's see here. Walk through this one more time. This isn't async. Okay, so when someone clicks on the button, we're gonna prevent the default behavior. We're going to set the button state to processing. We're going to either get a payment intent or an error. The return URL is going to be this return URL here. And then we're going to just pass in elements. So let's give it a shot. Let's add in some more, add in another message.
It also looks like we lost a curly on 157 right after error there too.
Let's take a look here. Where?
Sorry.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Thanks.
Cool.
Yeah, makes me miss VS Code. Okay, just a little bit. Okay, let's give it a shot.
Okay.
Add a message to submitting payment. All right, looking good so far. Let's type in our 4242. Can anyone on the stream give me a guess as to why it's 4242 is the one that gets you a successful payment? Just curious.
Yeah. What are the guesses? Fun answers only.
All right, so it works. We have our payment element. We're all good for cards. If you type in 4242, you get the payment. If we were to try and do like this 3DS card, we get the 3DS flow.
Okay.
Which is pretty great. This means you don't have to do anything special to launch this in regions where secure customer authentication is in effect. It just straight up works, right? So
very cool.
There it is.
Nice. I also noticed that in the query string parameter there, you have, you have the ID for the payment intent, the client secret for the payment intent. So if you wanted to, client side, you could retrieve the payment intent and show some sort of like success message, right?
Yeah, totally. And as a matter of fact, let's do that as our next step, right? Okay. So
also before you go too far too, could we talk about that on change real quick?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
Is that strictly required, or is this sort of like a best practice that we would recommend?
Yeah, it's not strictly required. It is a best practice. Like the reason that I said it in this particular example is that in this example, it starts with the button being disabled, and that's generally a best practice. You don't really want to allow people to be able to just like hammer the button while the form is incomplete. And so the payment element has events. You can essentially listen to these events. Whenever there's a change, you'll get kind of like an object that includes a variety of different fields. One of those fields is whether or not the payment element itself is complete. And so if you can essentially use this to manage the state of your button.
Okay. Yeah. So that complete is like someone actually filled out all of the fields.
Yep.
Got it. So yeah, so for cards, we know that there's like the card number, the CVC, expiry, etc. But for another payment method type, maybe can we throw in some other payment method types and see how those might change sort of the list of events too?
Yeah, let's take a look. Element is filled out. I'll just say filled out here.
Okay, cool.
And let's just add in let's add in another payment method type. That's a really good idea. So we have cards set up. Let's just add in, say, add in SEPA debit.
Okay.
Let's do that. Now we add in SEPA debit and do a refresh here. There we go.
Okay, great. And then like once you fill in those test card numbers for SEPA debit, then we expect that the console is going to log out that it's filled out, right?
Yeah. That's the expectation.
Okay.
Let's see.
Oh, wow. Okay, so yeah, so as you're typing the address, it automatically starts showing the other fields.
Yes, that's one of the really cool things about the payment element is that it's a complete element. So to the extent that you need to get all of this information, that you need to show this information here, it's all inside of the element. So you just don't need to worry about any of it really.
Got it. Yeah. So sometimes there's like specific legal text that you're required to show on the page, and so that is actually shown as part of the payment element. Okay, awesome. And then we see payment element is filled out. Great.
Yep.
Yeah, that's definitely handy for only enabling the button once they've completed it. That's feels like a good best practice.
It is. It's pretty cool. We'd also want to listen to, the event of like as you're like switching between these elements, right? Like it might not be filled out. So you'd also want to listen to whether or not it's not filled out, right?
Got it. Okay.
But let's see. What else can we do here? So we essentially have it set up. I think you mentioned we could grab the status of the payment, grab the status of the most recent payment that you've been redirected from, right? So
sure. I mean, I think people might also want to know about the appearance API, since this is sort of like a brand new concept. So could we talk maybe just about themes and kind of like the basics of the appearance API? Okay.
Totally.
Cool.
So like CJ said, the payment element is customizable. It has this appearance that you can pass in when you're actually creating elements. Let's see here. It has all of the different, it has like CSS like selectors. You're essentially able to make the payment element match the look and style and feel of your website. So if we go look at our element right now, this is just like the baseline one, but we could change this to look quite different. So let's see here. I am far from a master of CSS. So I am going to grab, this here.
Awesome. So yeah, if you've been following on social, we've shared like a ton of really hilarious payment element implementations. There's a Windows 95 one floating around, and all of those that you can see on the elements, the payment element landing page on stripe.com are just like these really incredible, beautiful elements. So they are all things that you can totally create yourself with several different levels of granularity. I think the smallest is by just passing in a theme, right?
Yeah, you can pass in a theme. Let's see here. I think there are a few. I don't know them offhand, though. I probably need to grab the docs. Let me stop sharing really quickly.
Okay. Yeah. I also just dropped a link to the Appearance API docs into the chat. So if you're following along at home, you can take a look at that. The theme that you might be most familiar with is the Stripe theme, which is what you would get out of the box today if you were to build your own custom payment flow using Stripe elements with separate card elements. But there's also a dark mode theme, and I believe there is a none theme. And so the none theme here is like meant to be the theme that is sort of like the reset. So if you wanted to really control the entire look and feel, then you might use the theme that says none as like a reset so that it does not apply any CSS. And then you can use your own CSS variables. And then even more specifically, you can apply CSS rules. So these rules apply sort of just directly to the CSS classes that are used inside of the payment element itself. So I'm going to hand this back to Charles.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the Appearance API is really powerful, and it's really meant to extend the ability to style it so that you can match whatever your brand settings are really, really closely, because we absolutely understand that this is more than just sort of an input control. It's definitely a little bit bigger, takes up more of your checkout flow, and so you should absolutely have the controls that you need to style that thing.
Yep, totally. All right, so let's see here. I think my snippet here is broken, but let's figure out how to use themes, shall we? Yeah, let's see here. Just a moment.
Also,
actually,
we've got
another the Appearance API doc here.
Okay, so I think under Stripe elements on the left. Yeah, customize the appearance API there.
Yeah, let's take a look. I actually haven't spent a ton of time using the Appearance API. So
Yeah, this is all brand new stuff. So absolutely go check out the docs and like play around with it for sure. We also got a question from Mihai here. Will all these work with the payment checkout? So the payment checkout. So Stripe checkout is a Stripe product that allows you to redirect to Stripe, and then Stripe handles all of the hosting. You have like it uses the Stripe domain, and users can go through the payment flow on Stripe checkout. That's a completely separate product from Stripe Elements here, which allows you to build your own custom payment flow. All of the payment methods that you would want as part of the payment element are available in Stripe checkout. So you can go enable those the same way that we're enabling the payment methods here as passing an array of strings as the payment method types on the payment intent. You can do the same thing when you're creating a checkout session. So hopefully, I think that might have been your question. The @Stripe.js is an NPM package that wraps up the Stripe.js library and gives you some tools for loading that onto the page when you're in a single page app. So hope that answers your question. But yes, the features should work with both the element or Stripe checkout, depending on what exactly you're reaching for. So that said, the appearance API is only for the payment element. For Stripe checkout, you can control your brand settings in the dashboard, but there's not as much granularity in terms of the appearance of Stripe checkout. So
totally. Okay. So we have our straightforward appearance here. So in this case, I'm passing in Stripe, and let's see, I haven't used this, use the API in this way.
Nice.
Okay.
Looks great. I think that might be the same as if you don't pass any appearance.
You know what? You're right. Let's try something interesting. Let's go with bubblegum.
Okay.
Let's go with night. Because the night's pretty straightforward.
Theme, yeah.
Right. I don't know why I expected the Stripe one to be purple. But anyway.
Nice.
Cool. So we have our themes here. And like if you check the docs here, it can get a lot more advanced than this. See here, they're passing in different variables and rules and all that other good stuff. So you can use the simple, straightforward Stripe theme, the night theme, or you can go, you can get really advanced and start using all of the different options that are part of the appearance API.
Very cool.
It is pretty cool. So that's more or less, that is the integration. That is legitimately the payment element integration.
Awesome.
90% similar to the previous elements integration. You have a new appearance API. You have the ability to essentially add in new payment methods super quickly by just typing in, adding to this array of payment method types.
Yeah, maybe we can add like Ideal and like ShiroPay.
Let's add GiroPay. P24 maybe?
Yeah, P24.
24. Let's see.
Nice.
And now we have cards, digital wallets, SEPA Pay. We have EPS, GiroPay, P24. Definitely not going to say this. I would 100% butcher that one. EPS. And as long as the payment method you are adding is in the correct currency, it will show up. It will show up correctly.
Okay.
And show you what it looks like if you add the wrong one.
Yeah. What happens if we try to mix the currencies? And then maybe what approach would you take if you were supporting a multi-currency?
Yeah, totally. So let's see here. So if let's say you set the currency to USD and you added in cards, which is supported, but some of these presumably are only, you can only really accept those with, you can only really get those with Euro. You will get an error. Let's see here. Okay. I thought I was adding it to this console here, but perhaps not. In case we'll be.
Would that be on the server side when you try to create the payment intent?
Yeah, it would. Let me take a look. Let me see let me go find it here so we can see what it looks like.
I guess the other thing to think about is that also now that you are required to create a payment intent up front before you initialize the elements, that you might also start to see a bunch of incomplete payment intents in your dashboard. That's totally okay and totally expected, because every single time the page loads, we're creating a payment intent so that we can mount that element. So that's something to think about a little bit. And
yeah, totally. So it is a server side error. So what
okay.
you would want to do in that case is rather than just getting the payment intent, what you'd want to do instead is maybe you have something like a try catch here.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I see we also got another question here from Mario. Will this update replace the old Stripe elements? So we're not going to remove support for the old Stripe elements. This is going to be sort of on the side or in addition to Stripe elements, but we do expect that most folks will want to integrate the payment element directly instead of the old individual elements. The reason being is that by default, you really just have this simple integration. You create a payment intent, you create the payment element, and you can unlock lots of different payment method types for all of your users. There's a lot of things that you can get from this, like localization, and we'll automatically sort of display the payment method types that we expect the customer to want to use. There's going to be a lot of optimizations for conversion coming to this over time. So we do expect that most folks will want to use this payment element instead of the individual elements, but they're not going away, and you can absolutely still integrate individual elements if you'd like. So
yeah, totally.
Thanks again for the question.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe all of the new updates, the new features will go to the payment element, but like you said, you can definitely use the existing elements. That being said, the amount of work that's required to say integrate any individual element is the same as the payment element. So it's tough to think of a reason, why you might want to do that. But you totally could.
Right. Yeah. If you currently had just a card integration where you were only accepting cards with the old card element, I would definitely recommend creating your new integration with just the payment element out of the gate. That way you can enable payment method types as you become, comfortable with those, or you're excited to add those for your customers. So yeah, absolutely. That's how I would do it too.
Yeah, totally.
Charles, the other thing that I was hoping we could look at is the ability to to hide certain fields. Can we take a look at that too?
The ability to hide certain fields. Tell me more.
Okay, yeah. So in the when we're configuring the element, you can pass fields and you can specify that you want to never show certain fields. So for instance, let's say you're already collecting the email address, or you're already collecting the address, like the shipping address or the billing address for the customer. If you want, you can sort of suppress that field, or you can hide that field in the element. So I believe that's like another feature that folks might want. If you already have sort of a payment flow that is collecting some of that information, or if you already have some of that information in your database, that would definitely be something that you might be interested in. And I'm going to try to find the API here for it. Let's see.
Totally. Came out yesterday, so we're learning together.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So this is the API reference for the payment element. And so when you create this element, right, when we're creating the element and we're passing in the type as payment here, we can also pass in options. So there's an optional second argument here with options. One of them is the business. If you pass business, you definitely have to pass the name. This is what's going to show when we're rendering that mandate text, or that legal text that needs to show at the bottom of the payment element there. We've also got the payment method order. So if you wanted to, you can specify exactly how you want the payment methods to be ordered. You can also pass in these fields, this fields argument. So as part of the options object, you can pass in the fields and say, oh, we've already actually collected the billing details, so never show those. Or we have already collected the email address or the phone number. So you can say never, And by saying never, that will hide the field from the payment element. So you don't actually have to pass, or you don't actually have to collect that information if you're already collecting it up front. And this expects that you will pass it when you're confirming the payment. So definitely something to keep in mind. There's also terms. You can control how the terms are being shown depending on which payment method. So you might also want to show the terms in a different way, so you can hide that and then show it using your own content. So this is one of the tools that you have for hiding and showing specific fields. Yeah, please do let us know if you have any feedback about these features or others that are part of the payment element. We absolutely want to continue to improve this and add anything that you might find useful. So,
oh, that's super cool. Let's I did not that fields one is super cool. So essentially, we could just pass in, say, inside of payment method order, billing details, name, and then it would just never show.
Yeah, you could say never, yeah, to hide it if you've already collected it somewhere else. So for instance, if you have it stored in your database or you have it in another form field higher in the process, then you could hide that. So
incredible.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for coming. We really appreciate it. As always, if you have any feedback, we're going to leave a feedback form down in the description below. Please let us know if you have any feedback. Also, we're available on Discord at stripe.com/go/developer-chat. You can also reach out to us and stay tuned on Twitter at stripedev, and subscribe to the YouTube channel Stripe Developers, where we release content just like this. And also we have some tighter, shorter tutorials and other videos that might be useful as you're building out your integration. Really appreciate your time and attention. Thanks so much for joining us today. And thank you, Charles, for the demo. Really appreciate it. This is super exciting.
Super exciting. Thank you, CJ.
Yep. And again, hats off and a huge thanks to all the Stripes that contributed. This is an incredible, really powerful tool. So I'm really excited to see what all you users are going to build with it. All right. Have a good one. Until next time.
See ya.